This is not the Church of Latter-day Saints of Joseph Smith. This is the Church of Jesus Christ.
Travis Wayne Goodsall. I think everybody knows and understands a branch on a tree is from the exact same seed of the tree. That all of the branch-offs originate with a single seed. Okay? Similarly, religion has branch-offs. People who think they're going their own way with their one interpretation that's true of the original seed. They're different from all the other branches, but despite that, they all originate from the one seed. They just all claim to be the one true branch. Okay? With me so far? Joseph Smith, in his first vision, says in verse 18, "My object in going to inquire of the Lord was to know which of all the Christian branch-offs was right, that I might know which to join." Okay? So he's wanting to be Christian, wanting Jesus as his Christ. And what was he told? Verse 19, "I was answered that I must join none of them." Not a single branch off, for they are all wrong. And the personage who addressed me, he doesn't say Jesus, does he? Said that all their creeds were an abomination in his sight. So, wow. Joseph Smith is telling us that not only are all the branch-offs of Christianity wrong, but that the first creed that started them all is also wrong. The tree of Christianity is an abomination. So Joseph Smith starts his own Christian church with Jesus? The Protestant Reformation is what sprang the collapse of the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church was a branch off with other Orthodox churches from the seed of Christianity, the Holy Roman Empire, founded by Roman Emperor Constantine. That is the seed of Christianity, the creation of Christianity, with Jesus as the Christ, which Joseph Smith says is all an abomination. So he started his own Christian church with Jesus? Well, why is Christianity an abomination? Is it because Jesus is defined in the creed as not real? And thus is called Trinity? Because he's a 3-in-1, but not really in one because it's not real. And so we just have to call him real and therefore Jesus automatically is real? If we say he's real, he's real? Is that how it works? Who is it that Joseph Smith is claiming appeared to him? He defines him as the sun at noonday. Islam, another seed, and there's sort of our branches, different factions, sects of Islam, but Islam was created in 325 CE, or 325, that was Christianity, 600 CE by Muhammad. And they claim Allah as their God. And Allah, when translated into English, is we. Well, that sounds like Trinity of Christians. Did they culturally appropriate the Christian God? Well, their Quran does mention Jesus as if he's real, but they downgrade him from God status. Now he's a full human mortal. No God status. And he's not a prophet, he's just a teacher of righteousness. Moses of the Jews is given higher status than Jesus by Islam. Interesting. And so Islam is kind of berating Christianity, but acknowledging that Christianity is legitimate and that Jesus is real, not real. Do you see the conundrum that Islam put themselves in? The Quran, the inspired word of Allah, who is exactly the same as Trinity, acknowledges that Christianity is legitimate, but that Jesus is not as high a rank as Christians call him. That's different than Joseph Smith explaining Christianity, isn't it? The Jews got together in 800 CE and formed their biblical Hebrew text. Elohim, which is plural, now all of a sudden became singular. Joseph Smith had a word to say about that in what's called the King Follett Sermon. The Jews had originated before Babylon, before the Romans, before the Greeks, before the Ptolemaic period in between the Romans and the Greeks, before the Persians, before the Babylonians, before the Assyrians. Judaism came from Egypt. Now I know everybody believes that the Bible is literal history, but archaeology reveals the real history of the world. The Jews never were an independent nation. King David was never on the throne of Jerusalem. Instead, Jerusalem, along with the northern tribes, were tributaries to Egypt. It's like the United States of America. You have all these different states, and you have a governor over every single state. But all the states must adhere to the federal government run by a president of the United States. This is similar to how it is. But just think of taxation as not of the people, but of the kings of the various provinces or states, villages, kingdoms, etc. Whatever you want to call them. And so Abraham, as we are told in Genesis, goes to rescue his brother Lot, taken hostage by one of the kings of Israel, and succeeds and rescues his brother. And then there's this guy named Melchizedek that Abraham pays tribute to, not tithes. Who would that be? Even though it's not a literal history, if it were literal history, it would be Pharaoh. He is the king and the high priest over all the land. He is Melchizedek, king and high priest. The 18th dynasty pharaohs were called the Tawut Mose dynasty. Transliterated into Paleo-Hebrew, they were the David Moseses. This is the origin of the Jews. This is the origin of King David. This is the origin of Moses, the Christ of the Jews. And their religion, shall we say church, was called the Holy Priesthood after the order of Son Amen, the sun god at noonday. Doesn't Joseph Smith say that our Christ is named Son Amen? Amen is a phonetic transliteration into Paleo-Hebrew that Isaiah names as the Christ of the Jews, Emmanuel. So, wow. The Gospels that Christians claim are theirs, because it talks of Jesus, were written by Jews between 100 and 200 CE. Well, that's before the creation, the seed of Roman Emperor Constantine's Christianity, with Jesus as the Christ. So to be a later religion and go back to impose an interpretation that is different than the original author's intentions is what's called an anachronism in science. it means you're automatically wrong, but science uses it in linguistics to identify the dating of a particular document. So yes, the whole Bible, with its anachronisms, indicate that it was written, even Genesis, during the Roman period time. It's not literal history. The anachronisms expose it as not literal history. And now I hope you understand that you should not impose Christian interpretation, to impose Jesus, whether it's the Christian Jesus or the Islamic version of Jesus. You have to use the Jewish learning of Jesus, who is Emmanuel. So now when you go to Matthew and you see that it says that we give you the branch offs that lead to Jesus, the human seed of males. They don't include the females because this is kingship authority. You get to the end and it's not to Jesus. It's to Joseph, who bought Mary for his kids, if you consider it literal history. And she was already pregnant at the temple. It's an anachronism, by the way. It's a Roman practice that was also a Greek practice. And then Joseph, the heir to the throne of King David, has a dream. And in the dream, he is told by Malachi, which the Greek word is different than Malachi, but that's where Malachi became an angel rather than a messenger. Evangelicon. I think it's just Angelos. Agelos, I think, in the Greek. I have to check it. But he is told that he should not divorce or put away his fiancée and thus not have sex with her. Won't matter, but nonetheless, she is supposed to, or he is supposed to name her child Jesus, because of the prophecy of Isaiah, which is the reverse of Jesus. Yah of salvation, Isaiah, salvation of Yah. That he is supposed to be named Emmanuel, the God of the Egyptians, the sun at noonday. And so the baby is born, and according to prophecy that he should be named Emmanuel, he is called Jesus instead. You never caught that? He is described as the sun at noonday, the Most High. Luke also says it. So then we have John chapter 3, verse 16, which Christians love to quote and put on homeless cardboard things, flash it to everybody. John 3:16, in which it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be Shua, saved. Joshua, Jeshuas. The Greeks have a masculine singular ending of us. And so it's not Zeus. It's Yah, Shua. Yah saves. Yah is Zeus. In Paleo-Hebrew, pictorially matching. Thus, Paleo-Hebrew is not Yah, it's Zah, because the Greek is Zah for Zeus. Us, masculine singular ending. And so we see he's described as the light. So, stars, right? They give light to the earth. The moon? What light? Sunlight. He's described as the sun at noonday by John, because this is a Jewish author. It's the learning of the Jews. He's talking about Emmanuel, though he'll call him Jesus. But oh look, verse 14 that all Christians ignore. As Moses, the Jewish Christ, lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Oh, so the Gospels aren't literal history. It's just a story about a prophecy of the future Emmanuel, who is a man like Moses. And thus Moses also is not real, because he's just another story of the prophecy of the latter-day Messiah of the Jews, to restore the 18th dynasty of Egypt, David, Moses's, with son Ammon as Melchizedek. Ammon, by the way, is spelled as an acronym, not an acronym, acronym, which is Melchizedek. Kind of cool if you go to academia.edu. There's this one guy who has deciphered Paleo-Hebrew for you. And if you dare ask who, so you getting the point now? Do you understand what Joseph Smith is telling you? Do you understand how there is no religion on the face of the earth that is true? And so I had a guy who thinks that he's the reincarnation of Lenin, the Russian Lenin, because of his thumbnail picture, who asked me, are you one of the Judaizers that we are warned about in the Bible? Jesus is Lord. And then emoji of a cross with hands in prayer. John 3:16 and 17. Do you see the abomination of Christianity now? They replaced the Jews. And because they replaced the Jews, Christians, 1700 years later, still don't want the Jews to replace Christians when Christians replace the Jews. Have you not caught on to the abomination of Christianity yet? Because wait, there's more. If you hadn't caught on to any of this, what was the name of Joseph Smith's church? Are you sure it had Jesus in it? Or are you replacing Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon with a neo-Christian interpretation of Brigham Young? A branch off claiming the seed of Joseph Smith, but with an abominable interpretation. And then go further. Since all of the prophets of Brigham Young are lying to us, then they're stealing our money. They're not doing charity. They are a fraud. They are criminal. Just like the SEC told us they were. Then you see how they are turning the scriptures and Joseph Smith into a stumbling block for Mormons. Exactly what Constantine did to the Jews. And so if Constantine, according to Joseph Smith, is abominable for replacing the Jews, what does that make Brigham Young to Mormons for replacing Joseph Smith? And by the way, this year is the bicentennial year of the day that shall burn as an oven, and they that shall come shall burn the Mormons. Treated just like Jews during the Holocaust.